person that has more energy. We want that person. And so they're no longer affirmed. Many of their friends are dying. Right, guys? Isn't that true? Those people that used to affirm them all the time, they're no longer here. People are losing their spouses. They no longer have that person that they've had for all of these years. And what's happening in our society? Well, we're growing up. We're busy with families of our own. We fail to realize that our parents really need us. And so we don't think about them all the time. We don't think about them as much because we have our own things to do. But let me just say this. Parents need to know that they can make a contribution in your life still. You understand that? Even if they offer you some advice, it's always good to listen. Even if you don't take it, it shows respect and honor to listen. Does that make sense? How do we do this? How do we honor them for the rest of our life? Well, let me give you a couple ideas. The first thing you can do is you can keep in touch with them. You can keep in touch with your parents. Every time you write a letter, you email them, you make a call, you're obeying this commandment, honor your father and mother. You know, I'm not joking. I'm doing this and going over it last night, and I'm looking at this point. I'm like, man, I haven't talked to my dad in a while. Call him up. Hey, Dad, what's going on? Many of you know my dad is sick, and he has cancer, and the doctors really don't know how long he has left. And I'm thinking, man, I'm talking about this. I need to do this. I need to call. I need to affirm, Dad, I love you. I'm here for you. If there's anything I can do. It means to understand who they are, to value them. Tell them what's going on in your life. You know, share with them what you're thinking. They want to know. They're interested. They would love to pray for you, maybe. You know, encourage you, hopefully. Proverbs 3:27. Notice this verse up here. Let's read this one out loud together. He says this: do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to help them. You help your parents now. Now, I've done a lot of funerals, right? I've been to a lot of funerals. One thing that happens at a funeral is that people send flowers to funerals. Isn't that true? But here's the reality, and from somebody who sits on stage and watches this, you know, all the flowers in the world aren't going to make a bit of difference if your parents are gone.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because the flowers are they're not for them. They're for you. I'm going to do this for you. Here's what I think. If your parents are alive, send them flowers now. Right? Send them a card now. Do something for them now while you have time. Right? I've always said this, and I hope you hear me. If you have parents who are dying, and I've gone through this with my mother already, I'm going through this with my dad, don't leave anything left unsaid. Does that make sense? You never want to live with the regret of, I should have said this. I should have told them this more. I love you more. I should have been there more. Don't do that. We should have gone on a trip together. Don't do that. Take the opportunity now. Affirming them means valuing them. It means listening to their counsel. Even if you don't follow it, like I said, you listen to it. Now notice this. The Bible says how we treat our elderly parents, our older parents, is a direct reflection of our relationship with God. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. How we treat our parents is a direct reflection of whether or not we even may be a Christian or not, a follower of Christ. Love this passage here from 1 Timothy. The Apostle Paul is writing young Timothy as a preacher, and he says this: people who don't take care of their relatives, especially their own families, have given up their faith. They are worse than someone who doesn't have faith in the Lord. Right? Why? Because people who don't have faith in the Lord take care of their family, right? For the most part, most people do. But if you're a follower of Jesus and you don't do this, wow, he says, look, it's kind of like you're not even a believer. You know, even non-believers do that. It's pretty strong words. It's a shameful tragedy today, what we're seeing. A lot of elderly parents being abandoned, left alone to die alone. And it's sad. This cycle of family, as it passes on, the roles reverse. And let me just share with you this. At one point in your life, they fed you, right? You remember sitting in the high chair, maybe? You remember them making you that sandwich? Or making you breakfast or whatever? At one point, they fed you, they bathed you, they cared for you, and they took care of you, right? At one point. Now notice this. As we grow older, the roles reverse. It might be time for you to feed them, to bathe them, to take care of them. And God says that's just part of being a Christian. Does that make sense? Just part of being a believer. It might mean all kinds of things. Let me just kind of throw some things out. It might mean going over to their house and changing their oil in their car, or making sure that's getting done. It could be inviting them into your home to live, right? It could be that. Come live with us. It may be hiring a nurse to give them care when they're frail and they can't take care of themselves anymore, and you can no longer do it. Let me just say this. That's not the government's job. It's our job as children to take care of our parents. Now, notice this. Many of you are facing this issue. God says, honor your parents. 1 Timothy 5:4 says this, but if a widow has children or grandchildren, they should learn to practice their religion toward their own family. I love that. Look, if you have children or grandchildren, they should learn to practice their religion. I love that. You got to live this thing out. Toward their own family first, and to repay their parents, for this pleases God. Now, look at me here for a second. This is so huge, and Jesus modeled this for us. And I just want to share with you how. Remember, as he's dying on the cross, you remember the story? He's dying on the cross. He says a few things, makes some statements. One of the statements he makes is this. He's dying on the cross, and he sees his mother in the crowd. She's watching this happen. And he sees her, and he makes eye contact with her, and he sees one of his best friends, John, in the crowd. And he says, woman, behold your son. John. He's talking about John. Behold your son. And son, behold your mother. What was Jesus doing? As he's dying for the sins of the world on the cross, he looks out in the crowd, and he's taking care of his mother, who's growing older in age. John, I'm no longer here to take care of her. John, take that role on for me. Take care of her. Jesus modeled that. And so we got to just see that. Pretty amazing how much he showed love, even at his darkest hour. I want to move on to the last section, okay? Because this is one of the hardest sections right here. That probably is the hardest section. What does it take to make peace with our parents? Remember, God says, honor your father and mother. He says, how you do that is a direct reflection of your faith in God and how you live for him. And so let me just say this. What does it take to make peace with your parents? I already said it. In a word, it takes courage. You want to write that down. It takes courage. Why? Because God is not asking you to gloss it over. He's not asking you to repress it and make excuses for your parents. Don't make excuses for your alcoholic parents. Don't do that. Don't make excuses for chemically dependent parents. You don't want to do that. You don't want to make excuses for parents who did not step up when You can't just say, God, I'm just going to forget about that. God doesn't want you to fake it. However, He does want you to face it head on. And to do that, it's going to take an extraordinary amount of courage. And I just got to be honest with you. The reason it's going to take courage, because you don't know what you're stepping into. Right? You may try to work on this relationship, but the reality is, you still may be rejected. You understand what I'm saying? The reality is, they may not be in a place in their life where they can do anything different than they've already done. The reality is, they may choose not to do anything different. And that's scary. But the thing about this is, God says, if you're going to move past this, if you're going to get further on in your life, if you're going to put this behind you, it's going to take courage. It's going to take us putting forth the effort. Now, I want you to notice this verse. In Romans 12:18, he just says this. The Apostle Paul is writing, and he says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on who? Who does it depend on? You. Who's you? That's me. That's you, right? It's you. As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Now notice this. He says, if it is possible. And the reason why he gives that is because sometimes it's just not possible. Because the other person has a say in it. Do you understand? As a follower of Christ, he says this, as much as it depends on you, as far as it depends on you, you do the effort. You put in the hard work. But, if you do this, I'm not going to hold that against you. It's not going to be on you. Look at me for a second. Some of you might have to do this. Prayerfully consider talking to your parents about what happened. Mom, Dad, I need to talk. I'm going to church. The Bible says I'm supposed to honor you. I'm supposed to honor you for the life you've given me. But I can't do that. And here's the reasons why. And you just kind of lay it out. And we talk about it. And you may not resolve everything. But you do want to seek some sort of resolution to the thing. If you're going to get beyond it, you got to put it past you. You got to deal with it. And that's a scary thing. And so some of you might have to do this. And it's going to take God's help in your life to get this done. There are wrongs that need to be right. And let me just say this again. You do not want to wait until it's too late. Right? When your parents are gone, they're no longer